Are you ready to revolutionize your relationship with money? Welcome to the Finding Financial Freedom podcast with the Frugal Physician, where Dr. Disha Spath will be your companion on this exciting financial adventure. Get ready to conquer debt, build wealth, and embrace a mindful spending lifestyle that will empower you to live life on your own terms.
Pearson Ravitz' story begins with Dr. Stephanie Pearson, a passionate OB-GYN at the height of her career. But then, a shoulder injury struck during a precipitous delivery. Her dreams were shattered, leaving her unable to practice medicine. Determined to make a difference, Stephanie became an advocate for her peers, guiding them through the complex disability process. Alongside insurance expert Scott Ravitz, Stephanie founded Pearson Ravitz, a company determined to approach insurance differently. Together, they set their mission to educate and empower physicians to protect their most valuable asset, their income, and the most important people in their life, their family. Today, Pearson Ravitz serves the medical community in all 50 states. At Pearson Ravitz, they understand the unique concerns of physicians. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Ravitz builds human connections before they create quotes. Life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness or injury could leave you and your family in a devastating financial situation. But with a little planning and guidance, you can prepare for every possibility. Visit PearsonRavitz.com to schedule your consultation with a Pearson Ravitz advisor. Hello, and welcome to Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, the podcast where we explore the intersection of money and well-being. I'm your host, Dr. Disha Spath, and today we're diving deep into the heart of financial decision-making. We'll discuss how we can make choices that not only impact our bank accounts, but also enhance our quality of life, both in the present and for our future selves. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our special guest, Tyler Olson of Olson Consulting, LLC. Tyler has dedicated his career to helping individuals and specifically medical professionals make sound financial decisions. He's on a mission to bridge the gap between medical education and financial literacy, and we're excited to have him share his insights with us today. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest. Hey, Tyler, welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be able to talk with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. So to get started, could you tell us a little bit about your background and what let you to specialize in financial advising, especially for medical professionals?
I got into financial planning in 2005. My father is a financial planner, so I actually learned a lot from him as a teenager and just decided to take it on myself once I got into my 20s. You could consider me a generalist for the first 10 years or so of my career. But then as a result of my friendship with my own primary care doctor, I got to know a little bit about the career track of many physicians and the issues with regard to years of learning and training, which are valuable, but not financially rewarding yet, along with just other unique things like student debt issues, increasing risk of like malpractice and the other risks associated with like insurance and stuff like that. I knew all these things, but as a financial advisor working in a traditional firm, we focus mainly on investment management, and I couldn't really help people directly with whatever problems they're dealing with. I decided to start my own firm that would allow me to just focus on the person and the current issues that they're trying to solve and then provide advice on that. That to me is like, I love doing that because then we could just focus on, it's not so much about like, I have a business, let's try to fit your problems into my business. It's more like, well, let me just kind of see what you're trying to figure out and let's work it out.
Yeah, the issue with providing financial advice to early career physicians is that we don't really have a lot of assets to manage initially, but we do have a lot of earning potential in the future. And it's so critical to get the financial plan in place early on so that we can make the right decisions when it comes to opening the kind of accounts we need to open and not contributing to the accounts we don't need to contribute to and such, and managing our financial life in a way or setting it up in a way that will be the most advantageous for our high earning potential, but also high tax situation going forward. So I think that's such a valuable service that you're providing. I especially love your Twitter feed where you give out kind of the core reasoning and advice that a lot of younger people in medicine need to hear. How do you help the physicians? Like, what is your fee structure?
So the primary way in which I work with physicians formally through fiduciary services is with those who are out of training. And, now there's decisions to make around debt planning, beginning to save for retirement, saving for other shorter term goals, making sure that the right insurance is in place to compel action on estate planning. There's lots of things that tend to have to be figured out within the first either months or years after training. And so I work with physicians for a 4-month period to develop a plan that allows us to figure out how to make decisions that will work in concert. My fee structure is a flat fee of $6,000 for that, and then rotates into an ongoing maintenance program of annual review, along with access for incidental meetings to discuss decision making that needs to be done throughout the year. So that's my paid services side. I love being able to help people who aren't at that stage yet, though. Obviously, as you know much better than I do, there's decisions to make, but not quite as many in training. And there's certainly not any money to pay a planning fee. That's the fundamental purpose of the Twitter feed, is like, I feel like maybe I can help as many people as possible figure things out on their own. And then they can just go on with their life and continue on in school or training. And at least they have a reliable place to get some information without making major commitments or major expense.
How did watching your father work as a financial planner affect you? And, you obviously decided to take the same career path. I'm interested to hear about your experiences growing up watching him do financial planning.
I saw that he really cared about people to the point that he would even talk about them after he was done with work. There were a few families in particular I remember that he was very interested in trying to help them with what they're trying to figure out. So I could see that the application of good financial advice in a safe space was really meaningful to those people. And I felt like I could learn to do the same thing, or I could do something similar. When I realized that there's a way to help people in a way where we can just focus on them and like the things that are really stressing them, let's just talk about that and figure that out. I feel a lot of fulfillment from that because we can just deal with that. And I feel like that has a positive impact on quality of life. I love doing that.
I really like that about you, that one of your core beliefs is that making good financial decisions can lead to a higher quality of life. Let's explore it a little bit further. What are some examples of financial decisions that can have a significant immediate and long-term impact on our well-being?
There's 2 recent examples that come to mind. Someone that I was talking with a few weeks ago, she grew up in an environment where her parents were very, very frugal. And I think frugality is a noble trait, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like almost to the point of extremely or stingy isn't even having to do with like something negative about them. It's just that the way in which they were raised by parents who grew up during the Depression in the 30s, how it impacted their thinking and how they passed it along to their kids. And now they're passing it along to their grandkids. And this person I was talking to, I was trying to tell her, like, you know what? It's okay to spend some money on a new bed. They need a new bed. There's like anxiety and guilt about it. And it's not because it's like, oh, like I shouldn't have this money. Not that kind of guilt, more like I'm worried that I'm doing something wrong. By laying out a person's cash flow and being able to show it to them, say like this money is going toward living expenses. This money is going toward paying off your debt. This money is going toward semi-annual expenses, going on a trip that you're planning for in a year. It's all been identified. And here is this savings bucket here that's labeled new bed.
Yeah, getting that permission to spend, or giving yourself the permission to spend, is actually kind of difficult when you come from a frugal mindset. And it's separating that frugal mindset from scarcity mindset and really focusing on the abundance of things. That's really hard part, because when you grow up in a family that's used to penny pinching, spending feels like something evil, like something bad. And I think that's the superpower of being able to financially plan and have a budget and have a financial planner is to know that, yes, you are doing the right things. And then you get that permission to spend on things that you need or even things that you just want that bring you happiness. Striking the balance of doing that, but not overspending. That's the hard part, right? And that's why we need a financial plan. So many of our listeners have, student debt and other high cost things that they're dealing with in their financial lives. How can they balance their financial priorities like that with a debt repayment, investing, and achieving a good quality of life?
When you ask that question, do you have a particular scenario in mind, like someone who's still in training, someone who's out of training?
So say early attending, someone who just finished their residency and is thinking about managing their student debt, and they're thinking about, should I be investing or paying off debt? How would they think through that?
You have to ask yourself some questions about the stability of your current career track, that you feel settled in the job that you're doing at the pace that you're doing it, that it is sustainable. You need to ask yourself, how do I view debt existing in my life? Because there's a few correct ways to do this. And a lot of it depends on the answers to those questions. So for example, that feeling of sustainability and I like my job, unless you know that for certain, the student debt question will remain front and center. But other decisions like buying a home, which can kind of encroach on student debt payoff, that needs to be held at bay if you don't yet know if you like your job, if you don't yet know if you like living where you're at. I mean, this is from what other people have told me. The first few months and even couple of years after training is done, there's a lot of adapting and understanding what the real workload is, both time-wise and mentally, to know like, yeah, I really like working here, because that thought process is really important. That should hold you back from other major debt decisions like your home. The other about how you feel about debt, it's a very subjective thought, because some people are like, well, I want to be able to live a little bit more. I want to be able to spend more right now because I'm trying to make the most of my life now. And I don't mind stringing the debt along 10, 12 years or 15 years. And then other people, they really value getting rid of it as quickly as possible. So you have to find out what type of person you are, because it's a huge difference between paying a $6,000 monthly payment and a $2,000 monthly payment on a budget. Like, what are you going to do with that $4,000? There are right ways on both of those extremes, but the person has to know what their personality type is in this respect to be able to decide how to manage that. As soon as you're out of training, you have to start investing in your retirement savings, because investing results require time invested. You have to give it the time. And that's one of the drawbacks of the length of training, is that doctors don't have as much time to invest their money for retirement. And so it's critical that process gets started right away after training. So 20% of one's gross income is a good place to start the conversation. I am not a fan of dogmatic rules, because there's so many variations of life that I don't know if that's always going to be the right percentage to go with. But start with that in terms of thinking, what can I reasonably do? Maxing out your retirement accounts at work, definitely your 403B or 401k. And if there's a 457B plan, consider it possibly. Depends on the distribution options. If you're working at a university, they may offer additional retirement plans like 401As and 415Ms that are meant to be supplemental. Depending on what your base compensation is, you may take part in one of those or all of them, but you really need to set up and automate saving for retirement through these vehicles. And then after that is considered, you look at what is my take-home pay going to be and what are my current living expenses, and then evaluate, after my rent and food and typical stuff that we pay for is spent, what do I have left? Do I have $5,000 left per month? Do I have $8,000 left per month? Do I have $2,000 left per month? That number will then begin to inform how to address the student debt decision. The retirement savings plan and the debt repayment plan need to be addressed concurrently.
I love that you bring up, that you need to ask yourself what kind of person you are, and also how much do you like your job? And is this going to change in the future or not? Are you going to be willing to work more? That was a big realization for me. Initially, when I was young attending, I was thinking about PSLF, but I realized quickly that I did not want to work full time for 10 years, especially in that phase of my life where I was having kids and I wanted to spend time with them and not miss out on their first 10 years. That was a pivotal thing for me to know that, okay, I'm going to want to cut back a little bit and not work at this pace for the next 10 years. And that's going to require me to decrease my debt load in order to increase my cash flow monthly, or at least not have it so dependent on me working full time. That is a key decision. And it really depends on your life cycle, right? And also your family situation and where you want to allocate your time. That really goes back to, again, living the life that you want to live and making financial decisions that make it possible for you. I like the fact that you brought up the different retirement accounts that you really do need to get started. How do you think about doing backdoor Roth? So you said, max out the 401k or 403b and maybe even the 457. If someone's going gung-ho on paying off their debt or decide that they want to decrease their debt load, do you also recommend that they go ahead and put money in their backdoor Roths?
It will depend on what that remaining cash balance is every month. I mean, the 2024 contribution limit, it's going to be $7,000 per year for the Roth. So that's a little bit under $600 a month. I believe that the majority of physicians are best suited to max out their pre-tax accounts first, because most of them are in relatively high income tax brackets. And there's a very decent chance that they will be in a lower tax bracket when they're in retirement, especially if they engage in financial planning early on, because you can create different types of accounts, including Roth and taxable accounts, that will eventually lead to options to choose from. When you're in retirement and you're actually extracting money from these different types of accounts, you can monitor your highest tax bracket. You can try to manage it. You can try to strategize around when you're taking money out. If you plan early on, you can do that. If you do that and now you have money left over and you're trying to decide, okay, I've got $5,000 left over after living expenses, and you're trying to decide debt payoff plan versus Roth IRA versus saving for other things. Like, say you want to buy a home. If you are wanting to prioritize purchasing a home relatively soon, you would have to be okay with stringing along the student debt longer because you have less to dedicate towards saving for the down payment. And where that $600 for the Roth IRA fits in, to me, these are really big life decisions. But you got like $400,000 in debt. That's a big decision trying to get rid of it, because whatever the interest rate is, if it's 6, 7, 8%, you cannot let that linger. You have to figure it out. The home decision is another big one because, right now it's particularly tough because prices are high and interest rates are high. And yet so many people in medicine have delayed settling in and getting their roots down. And it's like, I want to buy a home. I hear that so often. I'm sure you do too. And it's tough, so you want to give room for those needs and try to figure out, is there a balance where you can strike, where you could save up for a home down payment in 2 years, and that would give you enough time to know that you like your job, and now you have the cash for a down payment, and then your student debt is going to be hanging around for 12 years. Is that scenario okay with you? Is there $500, $600 left over in the budget for backdoor Roth? So I guess what I'm saying is that if you've maxed out your pre-tax accounts, the backdoor Roth is a nice feature. It needs to come after these major pieces are figured out first.
What are your thoughts on physician mortgages, physician loans with no money down?
I don't like them. I understand why many take them on because they have high earning potential and pretty good job security. So it's not like a major risk in terms of access to income, especially if they've taken the step of getting a true own occupation disability insurance policy with even partial disability coverage, because that obviously would put income in danger if one sustained a disability. So having the right insurance protects against that and therefore makes the home purchase more of a viable move. So the 0% down, I get why people do it because they want to be able to get in. And like, even if you put 0% down, you still have closing costs. And then you have to have cash available for maintenance because the moment you move in, something's going to break and you got to fix it, or you're going to want to make it your own, want to buy furniture, things like that. I get it, but I just don't like it because if there's any sort of shift downward in the real estate market and something happens where you got to move. Oh, you know what? Mother-in-law is suddenly needing care and we need to be closer to support her. So we got to sell this house. We put 0% down and the real estate market is down. We're going to owe the bank money to be able to get out of this.
You and I think, are elder millennials, and we remember seeing the 2008 market crash and people being upside down in their houses. But I feel like a lot of the younger generation has seen the house prices go nothing but up, especially in the last couple of years, right? So it's hard to imagine your house being worth less tomorrow than it is right now. But, when you do take those transaction costs into account, selling a house within 2 years of buying it can result in a negative balance at the end of it. And that is something we should keep in mind.
I think it's important to note that that very experience that you and I and others of our age range saw and experienced, kind of like the grandparents that I mentioned who were living through the Depression, it impacted their behavior in a way that resulted in being overly cautious. So I do try to remind myself that that experience leads to a bias in my own suggestion of what I just said about what if the market goes down. Not that it can't be true. It is possible, but I also can appreciate that none of us can know what's going to happen. So I've had some people that I talk to, or even clients that I work with, they're like, I really want to do this. I feel comfortable with the 0% down. This is my cash flow. This is our living expenses. And we work it out. I mean, sometimes you do have to just roll the dice. You have to live. There was someone that I spoke with earlier last year, and they were wanting to buy a home, actually here in Connecticut. The market has been really hot, very difficult to buy a home. And rates, were high throughout this whole year. And they were like, oh, you know what? We feel like we should wait, because rates, maybe they'll come down. And I had just bought our house here and we are at almost 7% mortgage. And I'm like, I hate this, but it's just reality. And I told them, I was like, I understand your hesitation to wait, but what if rates go up? They're like, oh, no, we just want to wait because maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll calm down, and then since then rates have gone up, and now they're buying a house. So You just don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the best thing that we can do is lay out the facts of our own situation and be really clear with ourselves and with significant others about our disposition toward money and debt and what we really value, and then have meaningful and intentional conversation about these decisions and then make the best one that we can.
Sticking to the plan can be really hard. Actually, when we bought our house currently, we, had the plan, paid off the student loans, and had the down payment ready to go. And we found the perfect house and we put the offer in, got under contract, and then the pandemic was declared. Literally the pandemic was declared as we went under contract. And then we had to ask ourselves, okay, so markets are tanking. God knows what's going to happen to the real estate market. I mean, at that time I was thinking, well, real estate's probably going to crash too, right? Because no one's going to want to move in this sort of situation. Maybe the prices will go down, but we had a 2.5% interest rate and locked in. And they're like, do we walk away from this and wait for the prices of the houses to go down? Thank God we didn't, And that's when we sat down and decided, okay, are we going to try to predict the market going forward? Or are we just going to stick to our plan and just, hold our breath and go through it? And then, hopefully we made the right decision. And we decided to stick to the game plan and just buy the house because that's what we had planned on doing. Try not to predict what the future is going to be like and just do it. And that had worked out really well for us. And I think the whole sticking to the plan message does work. In trying to predict the future, it does not. And no matter how smart you think you are, you can't predict the future. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind when you're making these major financial decisions, like you said, to come up with what your priorities are and what you need to do and write it down and then stick to it, no matter what the market's doing. And yes, you can, adjust your plan along the way, but these major financial decisions sometimes need to be made from a zoomed out perspective rather than what's going on in the market right now.
Definitely agree with that.
You talked about sitting down and making financial plans. And for a lot of medical students, residents, financial planning has not even been on their radar. I know I was just gung-ho about learning about biology and making the good grades in medical school and getting through, the fire hose of information coming at me. So can you share some tips and resources for medical students and trainees that can start to improve their financial literacy and decision-making skills now? Like, what are some places they can go to get good financial information so they can start learning?
I created a 25 video series that's specifically designed to address many of the issues that you just mentioned with regard to debt, budgeting, insurance, investing basics. I had it as like a, $99 for the series, but I just actually last week, I think, decided to just make it free. If anyone is interested in taking the course, they just have to go to adviceresidency.com/store, STORE. They don't have to get on any email list or anything. They just have to register for the course. It's free of cost.
Dang, that's a great deal.
Thanks. I hope it's helpful. I find that finance is also constantly changing too. Even the rules around public service loan forgiveness and these income-driven repayment plans, as well as tax law, it's constantly changing. And so I will be updating it as time goes on, but that would be a good resource. I encourage any students or trainees or attending physicians who want to just ask questions freely. If they follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, my handle is OLSONPLANNER. You can ask me questions on the timeline. You can send me a direct message. I will just help you to the degree that I can. I get questions from a lot of students and trainees there, and anyone's welcome to ask. I also think that there's a couple of books that I really enjoy reading that I think provide a good foundation. Have you read the book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich?
Yes, I have. Ramit Sethi is definitely a force in the personal finance world. And there's certain things he says that I don't agree with, but I think it's a good foundation.
There are some things that I don't agree with on some of his takes as well. The book itself, I think, gives some good perspective on money and trying to shape your life decisions around what you care about. The other one that I've really enjoyed reading is The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Totally agree.
I think that one's my favorite. Those are two great books to read or listen to. And the course that I mentioned and, following me and asking questions, there's tons of blogs and it's hard to identify anyone that would be like, oh, go to this one. But I mean, you have a blog.
Yes, that's true.
They should read yours.
I've been less active on the blog recently, mostly just doing podcasting. But yeah, I hope to continue to write more too. But yeah, there are so many good blogs and people that are just wanting to help other people figure this stuff out. And I think that's so wonderful. What about expert resources for finance information? Do you follow any other financial resources? Not doctors talking about money, but financial people talking about money?
One person that I think puts out some consistently good information, Thomas Kopelman. He doesn't work with physicians generally, but he's very, very good in terms of thinking about cash flow. I think he does really well talking about that. And then the other person, I really like her, how she writes her X threads is Rachel Camp. And then the third person that comes to mind, I really like her writing. And she gets into a lot of psychology of money and how to think about it and communication, is Meg Bartelt. You could find her, I think her business is Flow Financial Planning, but her handle is MEGBARTELT. And then Rachel is Camp Wealth. And then Thomas Kopelman is T. Kopelman, KOPELMAN. I always enjoy reading what they have to say.
Well, I'm definitely taking notes and adding them to my people to follow. So thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Moving on to more tips for our readers. Could you provide our listeners with some practical tips for making financial decisions that enhance their quality of life? It's a big, wide question. So take it where you want.
It's important to write things down. Write down the things that you care about. Write the things that you want your life to be about this coming year, the next 5 years, how you feel about your career trajectory. If there are certain things that you want to make a reality, if those are really important to you, if there's any sort of activities in life, family decisions that are a high priority, you want to write whatever those things are down because they should be the focal point of all the decisions going forward. After you've determined that, then you start to write down the facts of your current situation so you can figure out what savings do I have? What debt do I have? What's my income now? What does it cost me to live right now? What is my income potential? If I'm in training, it's going to change dramatically. How am I going to shift so that what I care about, the money that I have, how can I send it to the right types of savings accounts, retirement accounts, or just spending on things, whatever that is, in a way that is intentional and will help me to actually go toward those things that I care about. If you take those 2 steps, that's a really good way to get started.
Keeping in mind that why, those goals that you're working toward, that's the most important part because money is a tool. Money is just a way to make your dreams happen and make your ideal life a reality. Thank you, Tyler, for reminding us of all of that. And thank you so much for taking the time to coming on our podcast here at Finding Financial Freedom. I wish you the best of luck. And I hear that you are joining Jimmy soon.
We're going to record some stuff in a few weeks, I think.
How exciting. Well, I can't wait for that podcast to drop. And I wish you the best of luck in your new endeavors.
Thank you. Same to you.
Now, a final word from our sponsor. At Pearson Rabbits, they understand that life can change in an instant. It's hard to imagine that a sudden illness, injury, or catastrophic event could put you and your family in a devastating financial situation. Physician-founded and physician-focused, Pearson Rabbits builds human connections before they create quotes. Visit www.pearsonrabbits.com today and embark on your journey to safeguarding your future.
The content shared on this podcast should not be taken as individualized financial advice. We are here to share our knowledge and experiences, but it is crucial to consult with professionals such as accountants, financial advisors, or attorneys who can provide personalized guidance based on your specific needs.